Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast, food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and yes, the frustrated baker. This week we have a sponsor, so let me read this because I can't memorize it. Our sponsor is Amatus Recovery Centers, offers premier treatment for drug and alcohol addiction and co-occurring mental health disorders in facilities across the country. To learn more about treatment programs, call 833-631-0525. Addiction is treatable and recovery is possible. On the Food Enthusiast today, I am pleased that I have a fabulous guest, Elizabeth Falkner, celebrity chef. Just, you know, the beauty of this show right now is that I can bring in friends who are local, friends who are national, and friends who are international. And Elizabeth Falkner has definitely fits into the international category, known all over the world for the work that she's done. And she is an ultimate culinary competitor, having been on 40 shows. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Dara. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for getting up early in LA and joining the show.
Oh, this isn't
Um,
that early.
okay, well, I'm trying to be kind, but you said earlier that you got your yoga in. Elizabeth uh, is the ultimate competitor and keeps herself in shape many different ways. And you've seen her on Top Chef Masters, Next Iron Chef, competing or judging on multiple shows on uh, Bravo, Food Network, um, Cooking Channel. Hope that you have seen her, and I'm happy to call her a good acquaintance. We've known each other through Women Chefs and Restaurateurs.
Long time.
And let's talk about being physically fit. You ran the marathon, and you have a program that you're trying to put out there called Stay Fit to Cook. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. Being somebody who grew up in Southern California, lived in San Francisco for 25 years. I just moved back to LA from New York after being there 8 years. And I'm the kind of chef who's actually always kind of really been into sports. I mean, I played soccer until I was 40 years old. I I didn't really start taking up yoga until around then. Um, I've always run. Um, and then I ran my only full marathon when I turned 50. And now I'm
Oh,
totally into cycling. I've done Chef Cycle last year. We were supposed to do it this year, but of course it got canceled. So we're planning on a good one next summer in Bend, Oregon. And that's the 300-mile bike ride for No Kid Hungry. And talk about that's like no joke. That's just like training for a marathon. Like it's not that simple to ride 100 miles a day, 3 days in a row. Um, I also do like a workout called Junction that's kind of like a little bit like some Korean and Japanese old like samurai sword fighting. Uh,
okay.
it's more of a workout rather than actual sparring with people, but and we use wooden swords and it's very good for your body. I just like being physically active, and I really want people, particularly. I mean, I focus on chefs so much, but just everybody to be mindful and think about what you're doing for your body physically and what you're eating, so that you can perform at your best and enjoy things too. So it's not just
Right.
about like being a health nut. Um, because I'm not a frustrated baker. I bake all the time.
I know. But that's sort of like my common thing. I find baking just it's a science, and it never quite works out because of the humidity or this, that, or the other. And I sit there and I go, cooking, I can think of something to fix it. In baking, I go, I'm not so much on the balance of baking soda and baking powder and things of that nature. I make it work, but
You haven't gotten into the sourdough phenomenon of COVID-19?
who could find yeast? Who could find yeast?
But
I
see,
do.
that's the thing. Like as soon as I came to I was out here in California at my mom's during the first 3 months of the quarantine, and
Right.
and she was like a little bit worried too because she didn't have a lot of yeast. She had like a couple of little packets, and I said, "Mom, no worries. I started a starter, in March when I was here, and I just fed it a little, with some fresh yeast and flour and water, and I started a little thing, a little, starter. And I kept feeding it every day, and it just takes a little time, but eventually it's become quite healthy. And that's all I hardly ever use fresh yeast. I mean, I use the starter in just about everything.
Well, I don't do that much baking, and it's only me. So the first thing I got into is I made an Irish soda bread because you didn't need yeast,
Right.
and
Well,
then
those are
and
good.
then I, and then I got
How,
yeast, and I made a tray of beautiful cinnamon buns with the cream cheese icing, and immediately went up on Facebook. I said, "Who wants it?" Because I can't eat a dozen. So I have a chef friend I gave a half dozen to, and she gave me crab cakes in place of. So it
oh,
wasn't
that's
a
a good
bad
trade-off.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very good trade-off. But staying physically fit, if somebody's not worked as a chef or understands in the kitchen and in the line that the physicality of the job, the heat of the job, and what you need to do. And it was great for you for the competitions, wasn't it? To be so, didn't you beat the
Yeah, I
guys
mean, I
out?
think that you're totally right. Like I feel like I've had this conversation with chefs often. I remember I was in Philly last summer with this group of people, group of chefs called Cooks Who Care, and we were doing a little sword fighting with some bamboo sticks. But we talked about I mean, I feel like I talk about this all the time, but it's obviously this cooking career is a very mentally and physically demanding kind of job. It's, I mean, I feel like the whole world is now understanding how challenging the restaurant industry, how the business is, and how thin the margins are, and how people work all the time to try to just make it happen, and because of the hours and maybe that's kind of shifting right now. Maybe this is a moment in time that we have to sort of rethink how we do this kind of food business. But historically, it's been, especially in the last the last few decades, cooking has been just this very grueling, takes most of your time. It just takes so many different skill set. And so to be able to do that, I think it's good to do something that's countering what it's doing, standing over a chopping board or the fire, for most of the day it's hard on your body. So if you can, I mean, I highly recommend people get into yoga. I feel like I've talked about yoga more than anything now because it's not like a weekend warrior kind of sport, but it's something that's just so good for stretching and
Right.
and
Right.
aligning your body, and it's challenging, and also you can have a very hot yoga body from just doing yoga. I mean, people, some of the trainers I've met over several years have the most beautiful bodies from just doing yoga all the time.
Well, I think that chance has passed for me, but we can
Oh
try. We can
no.
try. We can try.
I have a really
um,
good, especially these days since we can't really go to studios and gyms. I've been using, I mean, I know there's some different apps out there, but I happen to be a fan of this one called Active. I'll send you a link to it because
okay.
they have just vocal trainers. It's not like you have to watch your screen, but I just was taking a yoga class on it. I know a lot of yoga instructors are doing Zoom versions too, but this app is actually really great because you don't have to look at your screen, and they just talk like they're in the same room as you. And they have like
Oh,
Pilates, and they have bar classes. Bar is really good too. I don't know if you've ever done one of those, but that's a really great, works on very tiny muscles that people don't even think about. It's hard.
I got into Caribbean dance. This was right before we went to lockdown. I was taking it. It wasn't far, and you know, I'm definitely out of shape. Usually, we go through the warm up, and I'm already hyperventilating at the warm up. but I was getting there. I was getting
But
there.
that sounds great. Yeah, I mean, you do
Yeah.
that, for a period of
I-
time, and it won't be wearing you out. You'll just be having fun.
right. I mean, you have to get in shape. Enough about my body. um, you placed, you got first prize at the World Pizza Championship in Naples, Italy.
Oh my gosh, it's a crazy story. Uh,
Oh, care to share?
it's a funny story.
Okay.
So it was right after we did the Next Iron Chef, and it had aired, and I came in second place on that, and I was pretty bummed about that because
Got cheated.
I just feel like we did such a good job in the final, and that it was just such a fun high ride to go, to the final against Jeffrey. And anyway, so I was kind of sad about that. And then I met this woman who was from Brooklyn. She wanted to open a pizzeria, and I have I've always made pizza ever since I owned my own places. And but I got really kind of obsessed with that Neapolitan style, and just the fact that you cook at such a high temperature with a dough that doesn't have any kind of sugar or oil in it, and it makes a delicious pizza. I'm really into the fermentation of doughs and stuff like that to give the integrity to the
Okay.
to the blank canvas. But so anyway, so she was she was talking about how I like to do food cooking competition. It is one of my favorite sports, and she's like, I think you should compete in the Naples pizza competition. I was like, well, that sounds great. She goes, women never do it. And I said, oh, then I should totally do it. And so I went out there, I think that was 2012. Yeah.
Yes.
And brought some froze some starter, brought some like pre-fermented dough. So I had lots of options when I got there, and worked on the dough for about a week before the competition just to make sure it was breathing the salinity and the air in Naples. And then I was entering the freestyle category, which means you can kind of make up whatever pizza you want to. And it was fennel seasons, because I didn't have a plan of I just thought, let me go see what kind of ingredients I can get, because that's going to be if I can use what's there, it's going to be the best. And so, most people do, mostly it's guys, young men who compete, and it was fennel season. So I was like, oh, I'm going to use fennel. And I love that thickened cream called panna, shelf-stable cream that you have in Europe. You know what I'm talking about? Like little cartons of
Yes.
thickened cream.
Yeah.
So that was my sauce instead of tomatoes. And it was like a period of time when I think a lot of chefs we were all using fennel pollen as sort of a secret weapon, so tasty, the flowers from the fennel. So I had some of that, and I found some fennel sausage, some aged provolone called Caciocavallo, and made this really nice pizza. And I was very confident building the pizza and putting it in the oven and all that stuff. And when I pulled it out, I knew it was a perfect pizza. I sat it down in front of the judges though, and they have like 4 judges sitting in front of you. And this one, and I said, hey, my name's Elizabeth Falkner. And that was when I was still in San Francisco. So I said, my name's Elizabeth Falkner. I'm from San Francisco, and my pizza is called Finocchio Flour Power. And there was one judge who was Italian celebrity chef, gay man. And he looked at me like with sparkles in his eyes, like I had some kind of unicorn, because I forgot that Finocchio is a slang term for fag in Italian. And I was really just obsessed with fennel, and I'm a gay woman, so it's just, this guy was like, who are you? And oh my gosh, I love you. I think that's why I probably won. But it just was like all about the fennel, and I was like, it's like fennel. Use the whole thing.
I
thought that was funny.
read somewhere, I start like a couple days ahead of time, just reading everything. You were allergic to chocolate when you were a child, right?
I was allergic to citrus and chocolate when I was younger. And citrus I got over pretty quick, thank God, because citrus is absolutely one of my favorite things. And then the chocolate thing, yeah, I mean, I would just kind of get hives, and I remember I think I was about 7 or 9 years, somewhere between 7 and 9 years old, and went to school and was like, I really wanted a chocolate milk and I didn't want to have any kind of reaction. And I just kind of told myself I'm not going to be allergic to this thing that I really like. Because I would just eat it anyway. And so, and then ever since then, I've been never had a problem with chocolate. Thank God, because I really love chocolate too.
So what are you doing currently? You're very involved with Save Restaurants, and you're coming full circle and you're producing and co-hosting a documentary on COVID and how it's affecting the industry. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, I had this, let's see. My first reaction when COVID hit and all of my friends, all of my colleagues, all of these restaurateurs across the country were having to shut down. And I had this really powerful, terrified feeling because I have lost my restaurants before. After 2008 and the stock market crash in San Francisco, I held on to a couple of restaurants for a few years, but it was just painfully hard because we just weren't doing the numbers. And you'd think, we're busy, we're filling the seats, but we just weren't, the cost of building some of the restaurants I've built was astronomical. And when the market fell out and everybody just wanted to eat French fries basically and mac and cheese, I was like, we're screwed. And so having lost basically my restaurants back then, gave me this sort of post-traumatic restaurant stress disorder reaction of like, oh my God, all my friends are going to go through this painful loss and I'm scared for them. And so I'm not running any restaurants these days, but I've been trying to talk to people about how they're pivoting, what kinds of how are they going to deal with this? And also like psychologically what's happening. So I was talking to a filmmaker friend of mine who I've worked with before. And we had already planned on making a documentary this year about how chefs deal with crisis. And then all of a sudden we had this huge crisis in our path. And so we said, let's just make this documentary when it feels like we can go outside. So we've been working on that just in the last couple months, and we're going into editing right now. But it's very powerful. We have a great lineup of chefs and different people in the industry that I had chef to chef conversations with, both live and virtual. We managed to sneak into a couple cities safely. Here we're talking to all these great food people, some you've heard of, some maybe you haven't heard of. You'll recognize some people for sure. And just trying to understand how people are pivoting or not, what their reaction is, how they do take care of themselves, or, it's just such a weird time. So we're just really having a conversation with everybody about it. Yeah. And it's amazing because you'll see the people, the chefs are some kind of superhero for sure, because they are resilient and brilliant, constantly pivoting.
I remember something that you did, one of the interviews, and it said, if you couldn't be a chef, what do you want to be? And you said a superhero. It might have been on Food Network. Could have been.
Yeah, well, that's still part of my psyche, but I would say now I want to be a food filmmaker. So I'm coming back around to my sort of upbringing around. I mean, I never really thought of myself as being like a Hollywood kind of filmmaker person.
Right.
I studied more experimental film, and it just seemed. I like a lot of abstract art. And my dad's an abstract painter. I have a couple of his paintings around here, but so I've just grown up with a lot of fine art in my world, and I feel like film is such a great medium, as I think food is such a great medium. So now I'm finding myself kind of in a place where I can kind of talk about both.
Well, you did your first homage. Your first restaurant was a homage to Orson Welles, the filmmaker, with Citizen Cake, and then your second restaurant was Orson.
Right.
So film has always been part of what you've done, but
And
You're
food is
out
like
there.
restaurants are like a stage, I've always talked about it like it's a sport sometimes to me, and it's also because when we go into a service, it's like a soccer team. Everybody's got to play well or work really well together and communicate a lot, and so hopefully we have a good game. It's not about winning basically, but it's like we want to do the best we can. But it's also like I remember the last restaurant I opened in the Upper West Side in New York. I would talk about how this is not this is a Broadway show. Every night is like a Broadway show. This is where Broadway's right here,
Right.
so we're going to act like this is what it is. We're putting on a show for lunch and dinner every day.
Before I forget, you can find Elizabeth and connect with her on her webpage, which is very simple, elizabethfalkner.com. And you can find her on Facebook. Her Facebook page is Chef Elizabeth Falkner, and Instagram and Twitter is Chef Faulkner. So I didn't want to forget that.
If you don't like my politics, don't pay attention to my tweets. My tweets are it seems like the territory where people are just mouth off. So once in a while I say things on Twitter that I wouldn't probably do on Instagram. Instagram is more of my food world.
Yeah.
And then so a lot of that feeds into Facebook too.
I did one post on Facebook as to for the president, and I was pretty blatant in what I said. I'm not going into it too much, but a friend of mine who is a little bit older says, I never knew you to be that nasty. I said, talk to me when your Social Security and your Medicare is gone. I said,
that's right.
I said, because that's what's up there. But back to food.
But wait, I have to add something to that because I'm very happy that I can still bring out my nasty woman pin again.
Well, I try to control it. I guess unfortunately, or fortunately, my body reacts to stress, and it comes out in a lot of different ways. So I've come to a mindset, if I can't change it, to leave it alone.
See, now that's what I think you should get into baking because have you seen that book, Rage Baking?
No, what's a pound?
Yes, I think you might need that one. I might have to send that to you because it started after the Me Too movement with a lot of women who just, bake when I definitely bake when I'm stressed. So as soon as this COVID thing happened, I was like a maniac. I just started, started making bread. I was with my mom, thank goodness, because she has a sweet tooth. So I made cinnamon rolls. I made spanakopita. I learned how to make phyllo dough. I was just going crazy. I was just like, making lasagna. Every day. I was like, we gotta, make something delicious. But I feel like it's a stress relief for me too to actually cook and bake.
Well, I don't normally bake, and which I tackled, and I did. Alison Robicelli put up her chocolate cream pie. It was on the Washington Post. So I tackle it because it's torturous to me because it's so exact. And I do have a scale. So if it has grams, I weigh everything.
Uh-huh.
But and I want to do it, and it takes time. And unfortunately with this, I have time on my hands. There's so much cleaning you can do. There's so many telephone calls or emails and Facebook. So I think baking is a great outlet for anyone where the cooking's fast. So I'm going to switch over. Elizabeth is currently involved in a site called 100 Pleats.
Oh, yeah, so cool.
It's the number 100 pleats. And for those who don't understand the title, a chef's toque or a chef's hat has pleats in it. And it has 100 pleats, and each pleat represents a different way you can prepare an egg. Am I correct, Elizabeth?
That's right. That's why they call it that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you can go on, and Elizabeth is one of the chefs. Anita Lowe from Anissa. A number of chefs that
George.
You know the name. Yes, George Mendez. And for 10 minutes, you can do more. But for 10 minutes, I spent $10 yesterday, and I made an appointment with Chef George Mendez. And I had my phone, and I opened up my refrigerator, and he looked through the phone what I had and told me what I can fix. So $10 for 10 minutes. I talked to him, and he even told me how to take care of the dill that I had. I had a question on that. It is a one-on-one, and Elizabeth has some set menus that she will teach, not for $10. It's a little bit more for a certain amount of time, but it's one-on-one. So I think it's great. I had such a good time with George Mendez. I'm going to go back on just to kibitz with somebody, and I'll probably come back on with you. But I wanted to see what the program was like. So everyone check out 100pleats.com.
Yeah, because how many times do you, I mean, this happens all the time. I've got friends who text me, even other chefs, and say, hey, do you have a recipe for blah, 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 or I have certainly had chefs friends over the years where we this is what we do in restaurant life. We talk about food all the time. So we're trying to figure out what we're going to make with whatever we have or whatever's coming in season. And so somebody at home can just be like, oh, wonder what George would make, wonder what Anita would make, wonder what Hong would make. There's so many different chefs, so many different styles of cuisine. I think it's just, finally, it's a really cool way to just go, hey, it's like a chef hotline. I can call somebody and get some answers, or I can take a 30-minute class or a 90-minute class with a group of friends, or we have kids classes, working on some teen ones too. So got to get the college students ready for, cooking for themselves, whether they're doing it, virtual college or being, in a dorm or whatever. But a friend of mine was like, hey, you should have classes that are for teens that are getting ready to go to college. I'm like, that's such a good idea. So I told him, and then we're doing that too.
It was great fun. So you and I can talk forever, and you're fascinating. I really need to bring up, how was your trip to China before I start wrapping up?
Oh, yes, thank you. No, you asked me so many fun questions. I feel so lucky. I got to go to China last August. So just a year ago, I was there for a month. I went with Anita and this guy, Devin, and one of the students from Yale, David, and then Professor Paul Friedman. And Paul Friedman is an amazing scholar and writer and professor at Yale on particularly food history. He's an expert in the Middle Ages, just a wealth of knowledge of food. And it was his first time in China, and just to be in his presence and talk about just food history. And I actually spoke with him for my film too. So it was just so much fun, and we tasted all these different regions of cuisine because we went to lots of different cities. I learned so much more about Chinese culture and food, and I loved the Sichuan province. I loved Shanghai. It was just a very fun, glamorous, cool, beautiful, historical place. And it's just phenomenal. It was just, I got to just taste so much more. And now I'm like kind of obsessed with, I've been making a lot of Mediterranean kind of food for a long time, being from California and everything. And then, and I'm so French trained in my pastry world and in most of my cuisine. But now I'm just obsessed with making like different kinds of Chinese noodles. I happened to make some, and I went to Thailand after China. And have you ever been to Thailand? It's so tasty. It's just mind blowing. I knew I was going to be crazy about it, and I came back just dreaming of all that food. And so yesterday or 2 days ago, I made some, like the pad see ew noodles. It's like tapioca starch and rice flour, and you steam them, and then you just put them in a wok with soy sauce and fish sauce, and it's just the best thing. So yeah.
I have a penchant for Vietnamese food because it's a very light food with the nok mum and the lime juice and things of that nature. I would, maybe somewhere in the future, fingers crossed, that we can all get back to traveling and be able to do that.
Yeah.
Before I forget, everybody, with Chef Elizabeth Falkner, you can reach out to her at elizabethfalkner.com, and that'll float up and has in our notes. As I go into the end of the show, I have two questions I ask. What was your ultimate culinary fail?
Well, several come to mind, but one of my first ones was, failure is an interesting thing because it's not really truly failure. It always makes you grow. But I remember when I first started cooking, I was a pastry chef assistant at a restaurant called Moss's in San Francisco, one of the best restaurants in the city at the time, and French style. And our chef was Julian Serrano, who's at the Bellagio, at the restaurant Picasso in Las Vegas now. He has been for a long time. But I was just an assistant, and another chef friend of mine wanted me to make a wedding cake for some friends of his. Well, I had never built a wedding cake before. I think I had done one, but it was so wild. I'd done something that looked like a city instead. But so I made this 3-tiered wedding cake, and then had to take it up the hills in San Francisco, so to Pacific Heights, to this beautiful mansion. And I at the time I didn't know anything about the structure really, so I had built up this cake, and the guy who was taking me over there had a old Pacer car. I don't know if you remember those, but it was an unusually hot day in San Francisco. Like it's never more than like 70 degrees in San Francisco. So, and it was something like 85. We got in this car. I got in the back of this car with this 3-tiered wedding cake, and no air conditioning on a hot day on the hills in San Francisco, and that cake was sliding all over me. It was a disaster. I got it to the mansion, asked where the walk-in was, went to the refrigerator with a little spatula, somehow managed to put it back together, walked home with my spatula and my sheet pan, and I was like, I'm never making a cake again. And then, of course, I opened a place several years later called Citizen Cake and made thousands of wedding cakes.
Bill Cosby, a long time ago, did a comedy routine about driving stick in San Francisco and just the hills. And the moment you brought it up, I just saw it sliding mentally. I have another question for you, and I'm going to let you think about it as I do another commercial, is what question didn't I ask you that I should have? And while you're thinking about that, let me talk about Amatis. Seek treatment for drug and alcohol addiction and co-occurring mental health disorders by calling Amatis Recovery Centers at 833-631-0525. All right, Elizabeth, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
Well, I was thinking like what I'm into these days more than anything is I guess your question would be like, what else am I doing these days that people don't know about me? I'm just really into, I'm loving living here and growing herbs and vegetables on this little deck that I have. I know it probably doesn't seem uncommon for chefs to grow things, but I haven't had that opportunity really for, I had like 1 pot of mint and 1 pot of marjoram in my apartment in New York, but I didn't really have space to grow a bunch of stuff. So I love watching, don't love watching the squirrels try to come steal my tomatoes, but I'm loving watching everything just grow and smelling everything. I'm loving the smells of being
Summer.
in Southern California again. Yeah.
Right. Everyone, Elizabeth Falkner, ElizabethFalkner.com.
You're so sweet.
And
follow me on Instagram. I'm most active on Instagram.
Okay, everybody, Instagram is Chef Faulkner, at Chef Faulkner, and follow her there.
No U.
And
everybody tries to spell my last name with a U, but it's just Falkner.
That's how I normally would spell it anyhow, but so appreciate you sharing time. Hopefully we might reconnect again on the show. If you have something you want to talk about, reach out. And thank you again. Big mois. Stay
nice
safe.
To see you, Dara. Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Get your yoga.
Okay, everyone. Next week's show, we're going to have Eula McDowell of Big Bean Theory, where beans come true. If you want to know, she has the most fabulous palate, and I'm not a bean lover. but I love what she does. So tune in next week for Eula McDowell at Big Bean Theory. As always, we appreciate you sharing our videos and helping the show grow. The video will be up on JMore Living immediately on Facebook. A little later today, the video will be up on jmoreliving.com. We thank you for your support. Wear your mask, and may your plates always, always be full. If you need to reach me, food@jmoreliving.com. Until next week, take care.